Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Collaborative Edges, conversations to inspire initiatives across languages and cultures. I'm Quispe-Agnoli, the host of Collaborative Edges. Today, we will have a conversation with Charlie Vela and Ronnie Garza, directors of As I Walk Through the Valley, to be featured at the MSU Latino Film Festival, and Scott Boehm, professor of Spanish and Global Studies at Michigan State University and director of the MSU Latino Film Festival. Welcome, Charlie, Ronnie, and Scott.
Thank you for having us.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rocio.
Great to have you here today. Scott, I would like to ask you the first question. The MSU Latino Festival takes place at Michigan State University between February 1st, it started yesterday, and 4th. Could you tell us the purpose of this festival and the inclusion of Charlie and Ronnie's documentary in it?
Sure. So the MSU Latinx Film Festival takes place on campus and off campus, and we're actually screening this particular film As I Walk Through the Valley at the Robin Theater on Saturday at 7 p.m. The purpose of the festival is to really take advantage of Lansing's good film culture and also build upon the film studies program at MSU, which is also excellent and very active. But what I noticed when I moved to town and started working at MSU is that there was a gap to fill. And so the festival's trying to do that. And by promoting films from Latin America, from the United States, also from Spain, films that deal with issues and cultures that often are marginalized within the United States in general, but also in Michigan and in the mid-Michigan area. So that's the general purpose, and open up a space and a platform through film to talk about some of those issues. And the film that Charlie and Ronnie made really serves that purpose. And so we wanted definitely to have a film at this particular moment that dealt with border issues because that's such a relevant topic because of the political environment, and their film does that.
Yeah, those topics are always important, but this is a especially crucial moment in our time. Charlie Vela has spent the last 15 years as a record producer, musician, and studio owner in the Rio Grande Valley, documenting local music and performing. Ronnie Garza is an experimental musician and democracy activist, and is working in video journalism related to activism in Austin and the Rio Grande Valley. As I Walk Through the Valley is your first documentary. It premiered at the 2017 SXSW. You have to explain me that acronym.
It's South by Southwest.
Okay, thank you. International Film Festival, and will be viewed and discussed at Michigan State University these days. Could you tell us why documenting 40 years of Mexican-American culture and music in this documentary, and why now? Charlie.
Well, it's given the kind of current political climate, a lot of the conversations we've had about the film are like, to that point, why now? But really, we started this project nearly 4 years ago when we started making the film. It became it started as kind of like an exploration of our own history of the area that we grew up in. But as we got into the election, it kind of took on other dimensions in terms of the conversation that was going on nationally. So it started as a more personal regional project, and it's taken on kind of a wider dimension. And as we were going through the editing process and watching the election go down, that was definitely part of the conversation we're having while we were editing the film.
Okay, Ronnie?
I started doing getting back into documentary and back into film back in 2013 and 14 with the HB 2 legislation in Austin, and then the immigration sort of humanitarian crisis that was happening in McAllen in 2014. So for me, in wanting to do this project, it was an attempt to humanize the region. It's an attempt to shine a light on a facet of the region that was often ignored, because those two events had national spotlight and brought a lot of attention to the valley itself. And even though Trump is in the White House right now, the policies that he is espousing are nothing new. And so this falls in line. We didn't know that it kind of reaches this sort of critical mass or mainstreaming of these issues now that he's in office. But this has been building for quite a while. And I thought it was important to find a way to talk about our people or whatever in a way that wasn't so sad. Because in documenting activism, you're looking at things directly. Maybe some sort of immigration issue or some other kind of issue that affects people in a very personal way, but at the same time, it otherizes you. It's not something that the rest of the country experiences, but we all make music, and so that's kind of one of the differences in approaching it this way is to find something that is common. That's more universal.
Mm-hmm. I have a follow-up question on that, and from my curiosities, what about the language? Is this all music, or when does the language starts changing? I mean, Spanish and English, and perhaps I don't know if there are other languages in the songs, in the music that is being performed or played, or this is always, or for the most part, music in Spanish.
No, this is, for the most part, music in English.
Oh, in English.
Yeah,
yes.
and again, that's the idea,
yes.
is that the Spanish otherizes us. And also the Spanish, our conjunto music tradition has been covered pretty well. What has not been covered is the rock music that's been happening. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's primarily the language of most of the songs that you'll hear. You hear a little bit of Spanish. And if we could have gotten some of the Native Americans from the region to do a ceremony, you may have heard something in Cotaname or Come Crudo or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, going into the history, I mean, even bands that were on the other side of the border in Reynosa and Progreso and like the Mexican border towns, they performed in English as well for the most part, because their bread and butter was entertaining Americans who were going there to drink underage or whatever. Yeah. So all the the garage bands and the go-go rock bands were all singing in English, even though they were singing in phonetic English, even though they spoke Spanish.
Yes, and that is. I was thinking, and the example I had in my head was the case that it maybe doesn't fit within this specific territory is the Selena, that Selena sang in Spanish or learned the songs to sing in Spanish.
Even though she spoke English primarily.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the, because the language is such an intimate part of each of us, to connect with each of us. And I have another anecdotic example that it's not directly related to your work, but it has always fascinated me. In Peru in the 1980s and 90s, we had one of the most successful bands of salsa music from Japan. They were Japanese singers playing and singing from Japan in Spanish.
Right.
But that's all what they knew. So it's from Spanish.
Yeah, there's a similar,
and they were amazing.
Yeah. There's a similar band in the conjunto scene called Los Gatos Japoneses.
Yeah.
And they through the international tape trading, got a hold of some regional Rio Grande Valley conjunto music, and so they would come and tour through the valley. And they were kind of like a novelty, like curiosity, just because they only knew the words from the songs that they were covering. They didn't speak a word of Spanish outside of that.
Yeah. It's amazing how music can. It's such a powerful channel and tool, to empower and also to affirm affirm values and identities, and something that is very needed. Ronnie?
Well, yeah. Since you mentioned the sort of like the Spanish language being intimate and stuff, I was noticing. I saw George Ramos on like CNN or something like that recently, and them talking about making more English language programming, because people in our generation, me and Charlie's generation, the pressure was to Americanize. The pressure was to learn, and not only learn but master English before learning Spanish. That's the experience that so many of us had growing up, and so it shows up in the art. And it shows up in the culture. And so to connect with people who have a Mexican American background and experience, like speaking English and making products in English, is also important.
Yeah. And Scott, would you like to comment on the issue of language? Because I'm thinking also on language preservation. That is something that I work with my colleagues in American Indian Studies. So
I don't have much to say about the language dimension, really, but music I would like to follow up on a little bit, because it was a very deliberate choice. When we were putting the festival together, we focused on kind of serious dramas for the most part that are really talking about a lot of social issues pretty clearly, and some of them are quite sad. We wanted to add something that involved music in some way. We wanted something that we could use in the Robin Theater in particular, and that space is a very DIY kind of space where Dylan Rogers, the owner, founder of it, just pretty much moved in, opened up the theater, and didn't know what was going to happen, and it's turned into this great music venue in the Lansing area that's also open to film and other performances as well. And so when I found out about As I Walk Through the Valley, when we were putting the catalog together, it just seemed like the perfect fit, because basically, you know, you come from the same kind of background that Dylan does, I think, and the film itself shows all of these musicians and artists who are just doing their own thing and creating. And we really wanted to promote that through the festival, because in and of itself, the festival has the same kind of spirit. There's a line in the documentary where someone says that part of youth is creating your own thing. And Dylan's done that at the Robin Theater. We're trying to do that as well with the festival, and the film is an example of it. So I think it's great. We have it.
Yeah, that responds to the next question that I had. Was why this film or this documentary in this festival? No, for why this choice in this festival? And it's very clear. Now another question for Charlie and Ronnie. Since you now have experience doing this kind of work, what advice would you give to young or starting filmmakers or people with aspirations, you know, of making documentaries and films that haven't done it yet? So, based on your experience.
Well, there's very low barrier to entry. If you have an idea and you are willing to see it through, those are the two kind of greatest components to making a film. We started this project never having done anything on this scope at all, and with very minimal equipment, kind of learning as we went. And if you have a point of view, and you have something that a story you'd like to tell that you're passionate about, there's really nothing holding you back except the time and the energy. And that it's and also not to wait around for somebody to tell a story that's important to you.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
Same exact stuff as Charlie said, and also, you know, since ours pertains to history, you know, like for other filmmakers, take time to learn about your own history, because there'll be things in there that surprise you and things that you can draw inspiration from, and it could sort of like just give you a different way to see the world.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take from the moment you decided to go for this idea until you had the final product released?
So we began filming in fall of 2014, and we premiered the film in the spring of 2017. Yeah. And it will be finally released in March of 2018. So
yeah, we had it finished in October of 16.
We had our first cut at the end of October, and then the cut that we showed at South by was different even from that.
Yeah, slightly different.
So it was a very long process, and we did nearly all of it, just the two of us.
Yeah, I was going to ask how much of a crew did you have?
Oh, right.
And
Yeah, very, very
Yes.
extremely minimal in terms of a crew. We had some folks come in to help us do some drone shots, which was great, and to kind of do some extra camera work here and there. But we shot it, very many interviews ourselves.
Yeah, edited,
and
produced.
edited this whole thing. Yeah, slapped it together.
Researched.
Yeah, and marketed it.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Good.
So
And
we approached
go
it kind of like the way an independent band approaches a record. You make it yourself. You have to get people excited about it. You have to go out and tour it. That's part of being here as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to package the CDs.
Yeah.
Now, I turned that question to Scott because he just finished his first short film that was released for the first time yesterday, right, in the film festival. The a dream. What happened with
What happens to a dream deferred?
Yeah. So very briefly, because we'll talk more about that in another show. What has been your experience? I know you have been several months working on these.
Yeah, this was a
Yes.
very quick turnaround. We started
Yeah.
shooting in November, and we had to pick up a little bit more when we got into the editing process about 2 weeks ago, and we pretty much edited the film in 3 weeks. It's a short film, so it's 12 minutes long in length. But
And now, what advice would you give to someone who would like to do something like that but doesn't dare to take the first step?
Yeah,
How did you dare to take the first step?
I would reiterate what Charlie was saying. If you have access to cameras, and if you don't think you do, there's probably a way you can find access to it. Just go ahead and find it, pick up a camera, and start shooting and learn as you go along. And in the Lansing area, the Lansing Media Center is an excellent resource, and they're partnering with us for this particular film. Anyone in the Lansing area can go there and use their cameras and their video editing equipment to make a film.
Good.
That's a great resource.
Or I mean, even
Yeah.
just adding on to that, I mean, we shot interviews on our cell phones for this movie. I mean, everybody has access now.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's-
Searching for Sugar Man, same thing.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I'd like to conclude this conversation thanking our guests today, Charlie Vela and Ronnie Garza and Scott Boehm. And I would like to invite you to the presentation of As I Walk Through the Valley and discussion with filmmakers Saturday, February 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Robin Theater in Washington Street, Lansing. And for more information about the Michigan State University Latino Film Festival, visit MSU Latinx Film Festival.com. And finally, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Letters, any of our sponsors, or any official entities of Michigan State University. I also want to thank technical producer Daniel Trego. Tune in for our next podcast on the DACA short film. Thank you.
Thank you.